Hello, welcome back to another episode of What It Takes to Be a Rock Star. I'm your host Mel, and today I'm interviewing Haley Dahl of Sloppy Jane. Hello, and welcome back to another week of What It Takes to Be a Rock Star. I'm Mel, I'm your host, and I'm really happy you're here. I'm very excited about today's episode because this week I'm chatting with Haley Dahl of the band Sloppy Jane, who you might recognize as someone who recently sang her original song in the movie I Saw the TV Glow. And she sang the song Claw Machine, which is just super beautiful. And Sloppy Jane is a really awesome band, and Haley has brought up to 14 people on the road and has recorded an album in a cave and has just done all this really cool stuff. And I've always been curious about how she does it and how she pulls it all together. And so we get to take a look into that today. And yeah, it was a great conversation. We were able to meet up in person on a day that we were both very busy, and I'm just grateful for the time we had together, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Alright, so the first thing I really would love to hear is just like a real quick rundown of like what brought you to like want to do music?
I started Sloppy Jane when I was 15 actually, and it was just a little punk band at the time. I grew up doing theater, very obvious by what I do, but I at some point became like disillusioned with the idea of having an acting career. It seemed like a lot of standing in line to beg to play a part that I like didn't really want to play. And so I started getting into all of the really character driven music stuff. I was like a massive, still am, but like massive, like My Chemical Romance fan as a tween, really, really into like David Bowie, really, really into Marilyn Manson. May his career rest in ashes for his sins against women. But I really liked stuff that felt very like character forward, even like Courtney Love, like her aesthetic and kind of performance persona, which always gets conflated as being a real thing, but I think she was just a very talented like world builder also. And I fell really in love with music in the way a lot of teenagers do, and I realized that I could use that if I did music rather than acting, I could create whatever characters I want and play them however I want to, whenever I want, and that I wouldn't be kind of controlled by the guidelines of acting.
That's really rad. Was your first show like with the punk band, was that with all that in mind, or did that come later on?
I had it in mind, but I was still really at the beginning. I remember it was some weird like fundraiser my friend was doing. I don't even remember what it was for, but it was in like a kind of weird parking lot, and there were no monitors, and I didn't know what monitors were anyway, but I was still playing guitar and singing at the same time, and I gave that up eventually because on stage adrenaline just makes me mess up at guitar, and I think I was still like negotiating with the relationship of trying to perform and play guitar at the same time, and I remember that being very annoying at my first show.
Oh my God.
But that's like the main thing I remember, is just kind of being like, I don't like feeling constrained in this way.
Yeah.
And so eventually I gave it up.
How many people were in your band on the first show?
I think 4. I don't totally remember. There was like this girl playing bass who was a cellist at my school, I think. Drummer, maybe it was just 3. It was 3 or 4. It really expanded eventually.
I know. Can you tell everyone how many people are in your current lineup, if you even know?
At most, it's been like 14. Right now, it's like averaging around 7 or 8 because I've gotten really lucky and have found our bass player, Isabella, they like play bass and viola. And so I'm able to like have them switch back and forth. I really, really value auxiliary players in the band. It helps me kind of cut down on some money and, and some seats in the band. And it's fun live to watch people like hectically switch between instruments. I really enjoy that. Yeah. So I think like if I didn't have people who played double instruments, we would need at least 10, but I am lucky now to have found people who do a lot of stuff at once. So it's pared down a tiny bit.
Okay, cool. But you said 14, right?
Yeah, 14? I think that we have toured with like anywhere between like 10 and 14.
Can you talk about how you made that happen? Like, did you have a big bus or something that everyone was it separate cars? Like, how did it work?
For a long time, I had an airport shuttle bus that I bought in New Jersey from this weird used car dealership. There was this guy named Bobby, like me and the band referred to him as Car Bobby. He was this very strange, like New Jerseyan Jewish guy. He had his hair in a ponytail and he was old. He was selling cars out of this like mobile home sort of, mobile unit office. And we were waiting in there to buy the car, and he was on the phone clearly being sued by someone. Like somebody was screaming at him on the other end of the phone, and he was listening and he was taking notes, and he was like, yeah, I'm listening. Of course, absolutely. And I looked over at his notes, and he was writing reggae over and over and with hearts around the word reggae. He was insane. He promised us that the bus was safe. I was like, listen, I'm about to be driving like 14 people around the country. Like, this thing looks like it's about to fall apart. Is it okay? Is it going to be safe? And he was like, yeah, it'll go. And we went on this whole tour, and it actually was fine. After we got back, I got a call from Car Bobby, and he was like, how did the bus do? And I was like, oh, it was fine. Just like you said, we made it back. And he said, no way. But it was the floor was like disintegrating in it, and there was no seatbelts. And I found out only after it stopped working that legally I wasn't supposed to drive it because it was a commercial vehicle. So I don't even know how I had it in the first place. At one point when we were recording Madison, the album that we made in a cave, we were driving to the recording site in Virginia, and the exhaust started leaking, and I fixed it by cutting out a hole in a Red Bull can and wrapping the Red Bull can around the gas pipe with Gorilla Glue and something to like hold it shut.
Oh my god!
And it held.
Oh my god!
But eventually it just stopped driving. Okay. And then it was given to our friend Mika's friend upstate, and I believe that it is now a chicken coop.
Wow.
But now we just rent vans. That was the end of my bus ownership. But I still like kind of want one again, but it was an era.
I love that. It's epic.
Yeah.
Were you the only one who drove it, or did you take turns?
No, we took turns.
Yeah.
We took turns. And once our violin player, Lily Desmond, convinced me that they should drive it because they drove U-Hauls a lot. And I was getting really tired and it was the end of the night. And I was like, you know what? Don't be a hero. Let Lily Desmond drive it. And they like pulled us into a gas station and like they like kind of like sideswiped the like gas station, like I don't even know what that's called. The machine, like they have the little things up to protect the machine, and they like sideswiped it and like ripped off like the whole side of the bus, and we just put the side of the bus into the bus and it just stayed in the bus for like months because I was like, we're gonna fix it, and we never did.
I love that. That's when you know you have a good bus, though.
Yeah.
Like when you can just like put parts of the bus in the bus and you're still going around.
It served us well. I mean, I think that bus cost $2,000 and it drove us around the country for like a year and a half.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. Just popping in here real quick to just say thank you to our sponsor, Sorry Cables, my favorite cable company. And I use their cables to record this podcast. And I use their cables when I play music. And I'm just so grateful for Sorry Cables to be sponsoring this podcast, this episode, this whole time. They're great people, great quality cables. Check them out at sorrycables.com. Can you just do a quick rundown of how you went from like your 3 or 4 people on your first show to like up to 14? Like what happened?
Yeah. So I made my record Willow in Los Angeles, and at the time the band was still kind of fluctuating in kind of punk band worlds. But the record was like, it was getting like a little bit more compositionally interesting. I think that there are a lot of things, obviously, if I went back and recorded that album, I would do it much differently now, but I was starting to have a little bit more of an ambitious idea of what I wanted to do with my music. And I wanted it to have kind of like more sparkling, more beautiful, higher highs and more gnarly, more ugly, more dissonant, lower lows. And I was starting to really struggle against the barriers of what that could be with rock instruments alone. And I started getting into like more classical music and hearing that in it more. And I was like, wow, a lot of this music really shifts from these like beautiful high moments to these like gnarly, scary, like horrific things. And it's the inclusion of all these chamber instruments, and I really like that, and I kind of want to start messing with that. And I don't know, when I moved to New York, there was a lot of bands around me that were kind of more, I don't know, New York has such a good culture of like a mix of rock music and then like experimental and noise music, and then kind of like weird like orchestra expats who like went to conservatories and are really good but decided to be weird now or something. And I was really inspired by a lot of what was going on around me, and I just kind of, I decided that like whoever wanted to be in the band like could be in it.
Oh, cool.
And I just kept adding people to the band, and then I would write parts for them, and I'd have to like learn how to write for that instrument. And then by the time we were making Madison, I'd gotten much more savvy at like, you know, notating and arranging. And then I like made a big chamber record kind of because I had gotten more comfortable with all of that other stuff.
Is that the one you made in the caves?
Yeah.
Madison. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because from my perspective, like your stuff that you do, it's kind of like, it's like, that's a really cool idea, but I feel like a lot of people would, they would be like, yeah, that's a cool idea, but like not pull it off, you know? And yeah, for those of you who are wondering, they made a record in one cave or like multiple caves around.
It was just one. It was just one.
Just one. But you were like looking around.
I was
right?
looking around. I did a lot of sessions in a lot of caves. I think I've recorded in probably 100 caves by now. But Madison was made in one cave, which was Lost World Caverns in Lewisburg, West Virginia.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so cool. But I feel like a lot of people, like, they would just kind of think, oh, that's a cool thought, and then not actually make it happen. But I feel like whenever I see something you're up to, it's kind of like, oh man, she's doing it. Like, that's a great idea. Yeah, like, and she's doing it. So like, I just want you to kind of speak to that. Like, what is inside you that makes you like pull stuff off? Like it feels like no questions asked. Like, yeah, I'm gonna test out 100 caves, and then pick the one. Like what is that? Where does that come from? Or is it just like you just have this really, really, really strong vision and it like keeps you up at night or something?
I think it's a little bit that I have a strong vision and it keeps me up at night. I'm definitely like a very aspirational, like anything is possible type guy. I have a really big imagination and I love to work.
Nice.
But also you just break everything down. I'm like, okay, I want to make a record in a cave. Like I want to make a chamber record in a cave that I play, and I want to play a piano in a cave, but I don't play piano and I don't know how to write for chamber instruments and I haven't really spent any time in caves. And you just kind of start to break it down. And I think that a big thing in my life is I'm always sort of looking pretty far into the future. I always kind of have my big goals and I have in mind what I want to be doing and the person that I want to be like 2 years from now. And I sort of just wake up every morning and think about what's in my reach that's in service to that. And none of it really feels big every single day. But then when you look back on it, you get a lot done. I also am like, I'm very deciphering about what things I take on. I don't like take commitments very lightly, and I don't make them very often. Like I don't do that many projects, I guess. Yeah. I'm not somebody, I don't consider myself to be prolific, if that makes sense. And I don't really have a goal to be. I don't want to make like 1 million records. I just want to make the things that like I really want to make, and I wait and I hold very still, and I'm willing to kind of be uncomfortable in a lack of productivity until the right thing hits me that I actually want to be making. And then once I know what I want to do, then I really like am on a track kind of, and don't really look around until it gets done.
I love that. That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to touch on before we finish up, because I know you said before, like you have people now playing a couple different instruments, and so it's helping you save a little bit of money and stuff. And I know you're on Patreon, right? Yes. So that's one way that you make money. But like, how do you make it all work with your big band and
I mean, it's a lot of things. So for a lot of years, honestly, people just weren't paid to be in the band, which is true of a lot of projects, but I feel like it's a scary thing to say out loud on the internet. But, when we were being paid like nothing /$100/$200 a show, you can't really split that up into 13 because you need a hotel and gas, and then that's it. So people quite regrettably were not paid for a very long time in the band. And I think that like I owe like a very large spiritual debt to a lot of people that put a lot of time into this project, that like some of them are still in it, some of them are not in it anymore. But I feel that like there's a lot of kind of permanent favor owing that I like have out in the world. And that, any success that I ever have is like in large part because of, people being willing to work for little or nothing in service of like a vision that's mine. And I'm really, really grateful for that. I now do always pay people, which is amazing. It's still not what I want to pay them, like, the true answer of how things get done is that just including me, no one is paid what they should be paid. And I do my best. We have agents and managers fighting for better rates for us, and I kind of have like the lowest that I'm willing to accept, that like, is my at cost. Like, this is what the show costs to put on at the very least, and like we need to be paid at least that, so that everyone walks away having been paid. Patreon, massively helpful. I think that like it's hard always, and always feels embarrassing and weird and dorky to like be on the internet asking people for money, but also David Lynch has never had a movie made by a studio and has always had weird patrons and stuff, and that's true of a lot of artists, and there really needs to just be no shame in it. And that like maybe if you don't have like one big billionaire funding your project, you need 100 people who are just willing to kind of chip in little by little. I have I own my back catalog. So I don't make any money off of Madison right now because, obviously that record has not recouped. Because whose record recoups?
What's recoup?
Yeah, what is that? Who is she?
Yeah.
But everything that I did before Madison, like I make like a small amount of streaming money off of, nothing that like, nothing to write home about, but there's something from that, and something from Patreon, and that kind of like helps keep things baseline running. I do music full time, which is great. I also like once in a while, if there's some kind of like gig jobby thing, I'll take it too. But I most of the time can make it work without doing that. But I won't say no to money that comes across my door.
Yeah. And I just want to say something towards something you said, like about having this forever owing people thing, because as a person who has played for free for people a lot, and a person who's also had people play for me for free a lot, like that's just so normal. Like that totally is just a normal thing that happens like all the time.
I just feel like we're in this like weird spot right now where like, I don't know, I get so like freaked out by internet discourse and kind of like over sanitized like boundary culture or something, where people really like refer to making art with their friends with like a capital L labor or something. And I'm kind of like, it's true, and everyone should like be paid, but also like everyone works for free on art stuff sometimes, because that's just there just isn't money. And someone that used to play with me, I remember like I felt really, really bad when we stopped playing together, and I had all these like conflicting feelings, like, oh, they did so much for me, but then when we stopped playing together, they were like, thank you so much for all these experiences that I never would have done if you weren't like pushing, Totally.
So like there is something you gave the people that played with you too, like they got to do all that and like experience that, and if they didn't want to be there, they wouldn't have been there either.
Totally.
So but you always want to give your friends like the best rate in the world. Definitely. And so I'm sure anyone who plays music who's listening like totally gets it. And, most of the time the person who's fronting the band is the one who loses the most money, or is out the most money, and is just like trying to make it work for people. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I read something like, I don't know, there's all of the like kind of union conversations going around, which I like keep kind of passive track of, but I'm not like super studious about. But one thing that I think the like United Musicians Union, but they were just like, they pointed out in some infographic or something that artists are like, that creators are the biggest employers in the industry, and that like, but that we're like not given money to employ people. Like, it's crazy, because it's like I remember I was talking to some bandmate about rates at some point. And I'm always really transparent with people that I work with about money. I'm like always willing to like share a budget sheet and kind of be like, this is why you're getting paid what you're paid. And like, you know, I was like having a kind of like uncomfortable conversation about some rate that was low, and like the band member like was asking me about, oh, you know, if you know, if you sell the merch, then you can pay more. And I was kind of like, I also bought the merch.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you realize, like, it's like everything, I don't know, people just don't always think about it. I'm like, I had to hire somebody to draw the design. I had to pay for all of the shirts. Like, the money from records goes back to the label. Like, it's not like being in the green is like different than what you think. I'm usually just recouping my own costs kind of. And, you know, it was a totally friendly conversation, but it's just, it's always interesting. People don't like see how it all breaks down, and don't even get me started on taxes. Yeah.
I know. So you're like, and now I have to pay taxes on all of this. But yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for opening up about it. I know it's difficult, but I think it's like an important conversation for people to have, to be like, I don't know. I think a lot of people are just curious about like how people are doing it. And Definitely. Like, especially like you with a really big vision. Yeah. And you're so inspiring for people. Like, I'm sure that people are like, oh, I want to do that. Or like, you know, who really want to pull off like a big idea. And it's like, how can they do that, you know? And it's like, you're literally like one day at a time, like you reverse engineer the idea and then make it happen somehow, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Also for touring people, this is just like a nuts and bolts, but I benefit greatly from the Best Western rewards points system.
Nice.
And I recommend that to my peers.
You heard it here, folks. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Let me know what you think in the comments or in a review, or you can send me an email at whatit-takes-to-be-a-rockstar@gmail.com, and tune in next week for another episode. All right. Bye.